Daniel turned to look at her. Her eyes were serious now. Ma. Then she smiled faintly and whispered, "What if I told you I could give you 5 million naira? All I want is something simple in return." Daniel froze. "I don't understand." Clara moved closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "I want you to get me pregnant, Daniel." He stood up slowly, his face pale. "Ma, I'm married, I can't." Clara interrupted, "I know, but I'm not asking for love, just one night. You'll get your promotion, and your family will be taken care of." Daniel's mouth went dry, his hands trembled. "This can't be happening," he muttered. But this isn't where our story begins. Before we continue, kindly subscribe to our channel, like this video, and share in the comments where in the world you're watching from. We'd love to see how far this story travels. Now sit back, grab some popcorn, and prepare yourself, because what you're about to hear might just challenge everything you thought you knew about people. If you're ready, let's begin. Daniel worked at a small logistics company in Ikcha. For 2 years, he had given everything to that job. He was hardworking, loyal, and quiet, the kind of employee every boss wanted but rarely appreciated. His wife Amaka was heavily pregnant, and life had been tough lately. Their rent was due, hospital bills were piling up, and his small salary could barely feed them. Still, Daniel never lost hope. That evening, he had just stepped out of the office when a shiny black SUV slowed down beside him. The window rolled down, and a calm, confident voice called his name. "Daniel, right?" He turned and saw Miss Clara, the new branch manager. She was a beautiful woman in her late 30s, elegant, with a kind smile that could easily disarm anyone. Daniel had only known her for 2 weeks since she got transferred from the Abuja office. "Yes, Ma, good evening," he replied respectfully. "Where are you heading? I could drop you off," she said, smiling. Daniel hesitated. "Ah, thank you, Ma, I'll be fine, my house isn't far." "Nonsense," she said, laughing softly. "Come in, you've worked all day, let me drop you off." After a moment, Daniel opened the door and got in. The car smelled of expensive perfume. Clara drove slowly through the evening traffic, glancing at him every few minutes. "So Daniel," she began, "how long have you been married?" 3 years, Ma, he answered, his voice low. "Wow, that's nice, your wife must be lucky," she said. Daniel smiled faintly. "We're just managing, Ma." Clara chuckled. "Managing? You're a good man, Daniel. You deserve more than just managing." He didn't know how to respond, so he kept quiet. When they got close to his street, Clara suddenly said, "You know what? You should have dinner with me tonight. There's a nice restaurant nearby. You need a little break." Daniel was startled. "Ah, Ma, thank you, but my wife will be waiting for me." Clara's tone softened. "Just 1 hour, I insist." Daniel hesitated again, saying no felt difficult. She was his boss after all. Finally, he nodded. "Okay, Ma." That night, they sat across from each other at a quiet restaurant. Clara did most of the talking about her travels, her past, and how lonely her life had been since moving to Lagos. Daniel barely touched his food. "You're too quiet," she teased. "Relax, I don't bite." Daniel smiled politely, but something in her tone made him uneasy. When the dinner was over, she drove him home and stopped right outside his small apartment. "I really enjoyed tonight," she said, her eyes lingering on him. "We should do this again." Daniel thanked her and hurried out. But as he walked to the door, he could feel her eyes watching him until he disappeared inside. Amaka opened the door, her round belly showing under her wrapper. "You came back late," she said gently. "Yes, dear," Daniel replied. "My boss gave me a ride. She insisted we eat out first." Amaka smiled weakly. "That's kind of her." Daniel nodded, but his heart felt heavy. Something about that dinner didn't sit right with him. Days turned into weeks. Clara became unusually close to him. She asked him to handle special assignments, praised his efforts in front of others, and even called him during weekends to check on him. Some of his co-workers started whispering. One afternoon, she called him into her office. "Daniel, I need your help with a report," she said. "It's urgent, and I'll need it ready before tomorrow morning. You might have to stay late tonight." "Yes, Ma," he said. That evening, one by one, everyone left the office until only Daniel remained. He worked hard, his eyes glued to the screen. Around 9 p.m., he heard soft footsteps behind him. "Still here?" Clara's voice echoed through the quiet office. Daniel looked up. "Yes, Ma, I'm almost done." She walked closer, leaning slightly against his desk. "You work too hard," she said softly. "You remind me of myself when I was your age." Daniel smiled nervously. "Thank you, Ma." For a few seconds, silence filled the room. Then Clara stepped closer. Her tone changed. "Daniel, tell me something. Do you ever think about what you really want in life?" He frowned slightly. "I just want my family to be happy, Ma." "And if someone could give you everything you ever wanted, money, comfort, peace, would you take it?" Daniel turned to look at her. Her eyes were serious now. "Ma." She smiled faintly, then whispered, What if I told you I could give you 5 million naira? All I want is something simple in return. Daniel froze. I don't understand. Clara moved closer, her voice barely above a whisper. I want you to help me have a child, Daniel. He stood up slowly, his face pale. Ma, I'm married, I can't. Clara interrupted. I know, but I'm not asking for love, just one night. You'll get your promotion, and your family will be taken care of. Daniel's mouth went dry, his hands trembled. This can't be happening, he muttered. Clara placed a card on his desk. Think about it, you have 2 weeks. If you refuse, I'll have to make some changes at work, big changes. Then she walked out, leaving him standing there, his heart pounding. That night, Daniel walked home under the dark Lagos sky, unable to breathe properly. He reached home and sat in silence as Amaka served him dinner. She noticed something was wrong. What happened? She asked softly. Daniel looked at her swollen feet, her tired eyes, and the tiny hope in her smile. Nothing, my love, he said quietly. But deep down, he knew something had changed forever. Would he tell her the truth, or would he face this nightmare alone? The question haunted him as the lights in their small apartment went out. The next morning, Daniel woke up before dawn. The sound of rain drumming softly on the zinc roof filled the small room. He sat at the edge of the bed, staring at his wife. Amaka was still asleep, her breathing calm and deep. He watched her hand resting gently on her round belly and felt a sharp pain in his chest. How could he tell her what his boss had said? How could he even speak those words aloud? He got dressed quietly and left for work without breakfast. The streets of Lagos were already waking up, buses honking, traders shouting, and the smell of roasted corn drifting through the air. But Daniel's mind was elsewhere. He kept hearing Clara's voice in his head, 5 million naira and a promotion. When he arrived at the office, he tried to act normal. He greeted his colleagues and buried himself in paperwork, but he could feel Clara's eyes on him through the glass walls of her office. She didn't call him in, but the silence between them said more than words ever could. During lunch, his close colleague, Tund, noticed how distant he was. Daniel, are you all right? He asked. Daniel forced a smile. I'm fine, just a bit tired. You look troubled, Tund said. You've been quiet all week. Daniel simply nodded. It's nothing serious. But inside, his thoughts were in turmoil. He couldn't concentrate. He couldn't breathe properly. He knew he had to tell someone, and that someone could only be Amaka. After work, he walked home slowly under the cloudy sky. He kept imagining the look on Amaka's face if he told her. Would she believe him? Would she think he was lying? When he got home, Amaka was in the kitchen. The smell of stew filled the air. She turned with a smile when she saw him. You're back early, she said. Daniel nodded quietly and sat down. He didn't say a word as she served him food. She watched him for a while before asking, Daniel, what's wrong? You've been quiet lately. He hesitated, then took a deep breath. Amaka, something happened at work. Her face grew serious. What is it? He looked down, unable to meet her eyes. My new boss, Clara, she made me an offer. What kind of offer? Daniel swallowed hard. She said she would pay me 5 million naira and give me a promotion if I agree to get her pregnant. Amaka froze. The spoon fell from her hand and clattered onto the floor. What did you just say? Daniel repeated the words softly, his voice shaking. For a moment, the room was completely silent. The only sound was the quiet bubbling of the stew on the gas stove. Then Amaka slowly sat down, staring at him in disbelief. 5 million naira, she whispered. He nodded. I told her no. I told her I could never do such a thing, but she said if I refuse, she might fire me. Tears filled Amaka's eyes. Why must life test us like this? She said, her voice trembling. You work so hard, and yet we have nothing. Now this. Daniel knelt beside her and took her hands. Amaka, I will not do it. Even if I lose my job, I'll never betray you. She looked at him with pain in her eyes. But how will we survive if you lose your job, Daniel? The baby is coming soon. We have hospital bills, rent, food, everything. How will we manage? Her words cut deeply. Daniel had no answer. He could only stare at the floor, his mind spinning with fear and confusion. That night, Amaka could not sleep. She lay on her side, staring into the darkness, while Daniel lay awake beside her, lost in thought. Hours passed in silence before she finally spoke. Daniel, she whispered. He turned to her. Yes. Her voice shook as she spoke. What if you do it, just once? Daniel sat up immediately, shocked. Amaka, no, you can't mean that. She wiped her tears. I don't want this either, but what choice do we have? We can use the money to clear our debts, prepare for the baby, and move on. Just once, Daniel, then it ends. Daniel's heart broke hearing her say those words. Amaka, I can't, it's wrong. You're asking me to destroy everything we've built. She turned away, covering her face. And what if we can't pay for the baby's delivery? What if we're thrown out of this house? What then? Her voice cracked, and Daniel felt tears sting his eyes. He wanted to comfort her, but he couldn't find the words. The next day, Daniel left home with a heavy heart. When he reached the office, Clara greeted him with a calm smile. "Good morning, Daniel," she said softly. "Good morning, Ma," he replied, keeping his eyes on the floor. She walked closer, her voice low. "Have you thought about my offer?" He didn't respond. Clara smiled faintly. "You still have 10 days. Throughout the day, he couldn't focus. Every sound in the office, the ringing phone, the tapping keyboard, felt distant. His mind was trapped between loyalty and survival. At lunch, Daniel called Amaka. "Are you okay?" he asked. "I'm fine," she said quietly. "Just thinking." "Thinking about what?" "About what you should do." Daniel's chest tightened. "Amaka, please, don't push me toward this." "I'm not pushing you," she replied softly. "I'm just saying, maybe this is the only way out." That evening, when everyone had gone home, Daniel found himself standing in front of Clara's office door again. The light inside was still on. He could hear the faint hum of her air conditioner. He raised his hand to knock, but froze. His heart pounded heavily in his chest. He stayed there for almost a full minute before stepping back. He turned and walked away quickly, his mind a storm of confusion and guilt. But as he walked down the empty hallway, one question echoed in his head. How long could he keep running before everything around him began to fall apart? For the next few days, Daniel moved through life like a man carrying a secret too heavy to bear. He woke up early, left for work silently, and came home late without saying much. Even when Amaka tried to talk to him, he gave short answers. The distance between them grew wider each day. Amaka could see how troubled he was, and though her heart ached, she didn't know how to comfort him anymore. Every time she looked at her swollen belly, fear filled her heart. They were running out of money, and the baby could come at any moment. At work, Daniel tried to avoid Clara as much as possible, but one afternoon she summoned him to her office. Her tone was calm, but her eyes told another story. "Daniel," she began, "you've been avoiding me." He swallowed hard. "No, Ma, I've just been busy with work." Clara leaned back in her chair, studying him closely. "You've had enough time to think. What's your answer?" "Ma," Daniel's voice trembled. "I told you before I'm a married man. I can't do what you're asking." Clara's expression darkened slightly, but her voice remained steady. "You're loyal, Daniel. That's what I admire about you. But sometimes loyalty doesn't pay the bills. You said your wife is pregnant, didn't you?" Daniel froze. He hadn't told her that. "How did you?" She smiled faintly. "I do my research. I know more than you think." He stared at her in disbelief. She stood up slowly and walked toward him. "I'm not asking for a relationship, Daniel. I just want a child. You'll help me, and in return, I'll help you. It's a fair trade." Daniel shook his head. "It's not fair, it's wrong." Clara sighed, then spoke softly. "I like you, Daniel, but I can't keep waiting forever. If I don't get what I want, I'll find another way, and that might not end well for you." Her words hung in the air like poison. Daniel walked out of the office with shaky hands. His heart was racing, and his mind was filled with panic. That evening, he didn't go straight home. He sat on a bench near a small roadside kiosk, watching cars pass by. He felt trapped. Every direction looked like a dead end. When he finally returned home, Amaka was sitting on the couch, her face pale and tired. "You're late again," she said quietly. "I'm sorry," Daniel replied. "I needed some air." She looked at him for a long moment before saying, "Did she talk to you again?" Daniel nodded slowly. "Yes, she said if I don't agree, she'll find a way to punish me." Amaka's voice trembled. "What does that mean?" "I don't know," Daniel said, but she sounded serious. Amaka held her belly and began to cry softly. "Daniel, I don't want to lose you, but I also don't want our child to suffer." He knelt beside her, his eyes filled with tears. "Amaka, please don't say that again. We'll find another way. I'll get another job if I have to." She looked at him sadly. "You've been looking for better jobs for years, Daniel. Nobody has called you back. What if this is our only chance to survive?" Daniel pressed his hands to his face. He felt his strength slipping away. The next day, Clara acted as though nothing had happened. She smiled at him in meetings, gave him compliments in front of other staff, and even sent him lunch from a nearby restaurant. Everyone in the office began whispering again, but Daniel didn't care anymore. By the end of the week, Clara called him into her office once more. "Have you made your decision?" she asked calmly. Daniel didn't respond. Clara walked closer and handed him an envelope. "Inside is 100,000 naira. Take it. Think of it as an advance. You don't have to say yes now, but I believe you will." He stared at the envelope without touching it. "Why are you doing this?" Her eyes softened for a moment. "Because I can't have children, Daniel. I've tried everything. You're different, you're kind, you're strong. I want my child to have that." Daniel didn't know what to say. He left the office quietly, leaving the envelope on her desk. That night, Amaka sat up waiting for him. When he entered, she could see the conflict in his eyes. "What happened?" she asked. He hesitated. She gave me money today, I didn't take it. Amaka looked down, silent for a moment. Then she said quietly, Daniel, maybe this is a test. Maybe God wants to see how far we're willing to go. Daniel frowned. Are you saying I should do it? Tears rolled down her cheeks. I don't want you to, but I also don't want to bring this baby into suffering. He turned away, his heart pounding. Amaka, don't let desperation blind you. Once I cross that line, nothing will ever be the same. The room fell silent again. The only sound was the ticking of the small clock on the wall. The next morning, Daniel received a text message from Clara. Come to my house tonight. It's time to stop running. He stared at the screen, frozen. His palms grew cold. That evening, he walked back and forth in the living room, thinking, praying, and trembling. Amaka sat quietly on the bed, her face hidden in her hands. Finally, she lifted her head and said in a broken voice, Do what you must, Daniel. Just come back to me. Daniel stood there, his heart heavy with guilt. He picked up his jacket and walked out into the dark Lagos night. Every step felt like a burden he could never lift. Would this decision save his family, or destroy everything he loved? The night was quiet, the streets nearly empty as Daniel walked toward the address Clara had sent him. His heart pounded with every step. Streetlights flickered, and the sound of distant traffic echoed faintly through the city. He felt like a man walking into a trap but didn't know how to turn back. When he reached Clara's house in Lekki, the gate opened automatically. A security guard nodded and let him in without a word. The house was large, glowing softly with warm lights. Everything about it looked peaceful, yet Daniel felt an unshakable fear deep inside. He stood at the front door, frozen for a moment, before he finally rang the bell. Clara opened the door herself, wearing a calm smile. I knew you'd come, she said softly. Daniel lowered his eyes. I just want this to be over, Ma. Of course, she replied gently. Come in. Inside, the house smelled of lavender. Classical music played quietly in the background. Clara led him to the living room and asked, Would you like something to drink? No, thank you, Ma, he said quickly. She smiled faintly, watching him. You're nervous, don't be, no one will ever know. Daniel didn't respond, he could barely breathe. For a long, heavy silence, neither of them moved. Then Clara said, I'll keep my promise, Daniel. You'll have your money and your promotion by tomorrow. You've made the right choice. Daniel's heart felt like it was breaking, but he stayed silent. That night marked a line that could never be erased. The next morning, Daniel woke up early in his own house, his face buried in his palms. He felt dirty, ashamed, and hollow. Amaka sat on the edge of the bed, her face pale. Did you go? She asked in a faint voice. Daniel nodded slowly. Amaka closed her eyes, and tears rolled down her cheeks. I told myself it would be fine, she whispered, but it doesn't feel fine at all. He tried to reach for her hand, but she pulled away. Don't touch me, Daniel, she said, her voice shaking. I told you to do it because we needed the money, but now that it's done, I can't even look at you. Daniel's eyes filled with tears. Amaka, please don't say that, you told me to. I know what I said, she interrupted, her voice rising, but that doesn't make it right. She turned her face away, and the silence between them grew painful. Later that day, Daniel received a bank alert on his phone. 5 million naira had been deposited into his account. A few minutes later, another message came from Clara. I told you I keep my promises. See you at work, Daniel. He stared at the message for a long time, his heart sinking deeper. At work the next morning, everyone noticed that Daniel's mood was different. Some thought he was happier because of the promotion that was suddenly announced. Others whispered about the mysterious way he had risen overnight. Clara, on the other hand, looked calm and satisfied. When Daniel walked into her office to thank her formally, she smiled and said, You did well, I'm proud of you. He forced a polite smile. Thank you, Ma. As he turned to leave, she said quietly, Don't forget, this isn't over. Daniel froze. Ma, I thought. Clara interrupted smoothly, I know what you thought, but I enjoyed our time together, Daniel. I'd like to see you again, often. He turned slowly. That wasn't part of the deal. She looked at him with a faint smile. It is now. Daniel's heart began to race. Please, Ma, I can't continue with this. My wife. Your wife, Clara said with a short laugh. You think your wife did know, you think she didn't agree. Her words cut through him like a knife. Don't act like a saint, Daniel. You made your choice. And if you want to keep your job and your promotion, you'll do as I say. Daniel stood there, speechless, anger and shame burning inside him. He wanted to walk out, to quit, to never see her again. But he thought of Amaka and the baby, and fear paralyzed him. That night when he got home, Amaka was sitting quietly on the bed. She didn't look up when he entered. Amaka, he said softly, I got the money. She nodded without a word. I also got the promotion, he added, trying to sound relieved. Still, she said nothing. He sighed heavily. Please, talk to me. Finally, she turned to him. How do you expect me to talk to you, Daniel? Every time I look at you, I remember what you did, what we both agreed to. It doesn't feel like we've won anything. It feels like we've lost everything. Daniel sat beside her, his voice trembling. I did it for us, for this family. Amaka wiped her tears. Then tell me, Daniel, why do I feel like we're strangers now? Her words pierced him deeper than he expected. He wanted to speak, to defend himself, but nothing came out. As the days passed, the tension in their home grew unbearable. Amaka could barely sleep. Daniel avoided looking at her. The money that once seemed like a blessing now felt like a curse. Meanwhile, Clara kept her promise and her threat. She called Daniel constantly, sometimes during work, sometimes late at night. When he ignored her messages, she would remind him that his position depended on her. Don't forget who gave you that office, she texted one night. If you want to keep it, you know what to do. Daniel's hands shook as he read it. He deleted the message quickly before Amaka could see. He sat on the edge of the bed, staring into the darkness, his mind torn apart. He couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't breathe. He whispered to himself, what have I done? How did I get here? The next morning, when he looked into Amaka's eyes, he saw nothing but quiet pain. He wanted to hold her, to tell her it would all be fine, but even he didn't believe that anymore. And then, just when he thought things couldn't get worse, Clara called him into her office again. Daniel, she said with a calm smile, I need to see you tonight, at my house. Daniel froze. Ma, I can't. Her smile disappeared. If you refuse, I'll make sure your name is replaced on that promotion list by tomorrow morning. Daniel felt his chest tighten. His world began to spin. Would he keep his job and lose his soul, or walk away and lose everything he had fought to protect? The question echoed in his heart as he left her office, his face pale and his future uncertain. If you enjoyed our stories, please hit that like button. It really helps our channel grow and allows us to bring you more amazing stories. Also, I'm always curious to know where our beautiful family is watching from. Please drop the country where you're watching from in the comments. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel and click the notification bell so you never miss our next story. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Share your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one and try to respond to as many as I can.